Hello everyone and welcome. Today we're going to be going over the new big patch that dropped for Deadlock just today, and already we have some big changes right in front of us. First thing, they added a new hero named Mirage. Mirage is an interesting character that's been getting a bit of work over the past couple of patches in the background. If you've been messing around in sandbox mode, you most likely know about like some of the characters that you can play with. I've done like a short on it, for example, and I've done a whole video kind of talking about characters I'm interested in. Mirage is really neat, and he got a new model during this update and was released to the public, which is really cool. On top of that, they seemingly added a new anti-cheat that actually turns people to frogs if they're cheating the game, which is a really fun and charming way of handling cheaters. It seems that they've updated the anti-cheat since cheating has become a little bit of a problem as of recently, and so I'm happy to see that change come along. They've also added quick cast support, which is really nice because some characters really benefit from just having easy quick casts. Also, seemingly they added a custom match play mode, which is really neat. I appreciate it. It's going to allow people to run tournaments, and it's going to make it run a lot easier and make it so people can actually run tournaments and such without a lot of issues that we kind of had before. So having private lobbies is just a really cool system to have. There's also finally the addition of a cheat report button, since that wasn't in the game before. All you could report people for was like griefing and being toxic and that kind of thing. So I'm happy to see that that was addressed. They also recently added the South Africa servers and Italian localization, so it's nice to have more people have access to the game since I mean, like, why not? It's always cool to have more people in the game. They've also mentioned a couple of performance improvements, which is always nice to see. They also recently updated Viscus's design. I will show you on the screen now what he looks like. They just slightly updated his head so it's more gooey. I'm not the biggest fan of the redesign, but I'm interested to see the direction they're going to take the character visually compared to how he was before. They also updated the visuals for when Kelvin puts on the frozen bubble over the rejuvenator, since you aren't able to hit it anymore when it's under the Kelvin bubble, and so they made it just more visually clear that you can't hit it now. There's like these little frost crystals around it. It's a pretty neat effect. There's also a lot of miscellaneous changes, so some visual changes. They changed how Abram's punch looks, for example, where if you charge it up, he'll do like this big slap now. Dynamo also got an update with this animation. He'll like pump out his like stomach and do an attack with that. They also seemingly did a complete overhaul of Hayes' voiceover, so now she has a different approach with how she's being voice acted, and I don't know if I love it, don't know if I hate it. I'm kind of neutral on it. Now here comes the gameplay stuff. Side lanes are a little further apart from the mid lanes, which is interesting. It's a little interesting. They've also made it so that the setup is 1-2-2-1, so that means that there's going to be a 1v1 on the end side of the maps, and then a 2v2 in the inner side of the maps, which will probably be a lot better, because I mean, having a more RNG base could potentially roll for something that is just kind of stupid, like a stupid advantage going on with some characters being able to jump from lane to lane without, like, it just gets rid of that randomized element, which I appreciate because they want to have a little bit of a competitive element to this game overall. Zipline boost also has a cooldown when you start up the match now, so you don't immediately have access to your zipline boost when you're trying to respawn from like your first time dying and such, which is an interesting choice. I appreciate them adding that because it makes people have to think about zipline a little more, since most people will just pop it immediately to get back into the fight. They also added a soul generator in the little spawn area with the little shop there, so that if you're just slightly behind on getting that item by like a couple of souls, you can just grab it really quickly. The souls that pop out will give you 10 each, so it's not the craziest. You can't like replace a farm with that, for example, but it's an interesting approach to having just a little under in terms of soul. They also buffed Sinner's Sacrifice, so it now has a permanent golden statue bonus when it's killed, so the little gambling machines, you're going to get a little more out of destroying those now. They also, I almost forgot to mention, but they also added a First Blood bounty bonus, which is when you get that first kill in the entire game, you'll get a little more soul now out of that first kill. It's just a cool little bonus for whoever gets the kill first, and it might help that lane out in terms of pushing the advantage even further, which is nice to see. Now let's talk about balance changes. They seemingly have nerfed a lot of the melee stuff, and Headhunter across the board kind of got nerfed. It isn't the worst, but it's just not as broken on like self-sustain as it was before. They also increased the amount of ammo They also increased the amount of ammo you get of Titanic Mag, which is really nice to see. They also moved around some of the items, so like Siphon Bullets is now in Vitality and Shadow Weave is in the weapon item slot, so if you want to use Siphon Bullets in like a healing slot, for example, it's nice to have. Once again, they are nerfing a bit of melee lifesteal, so it does less damage, but there is a little more access to healing through Life Strike, so they're giving a little more sustain but doing less damage with Life Strike and melee lifesteal. Another notable nerf here is Soul Rebirth. Soul Rebirth is the item that allows you to kind of do like the little mid-boss like bonus but late game, and usually a lot of people use it to close it out. Now it's semi-nerfed with its respawn rate on base being plus 15 seconds, so it takes a little longer to spawn in with Soul Rebirth, so it lost a little bit of value, which is kind of shitty, but it is what it is. Rapid Recharge got buffed, and they nerfed Echo Shard, so people can't spam it as quickly as before. There recently was a whole thing with a lot of Bebop mains just pressing one button and immediately getting bomb, Echo Shard, bomb. It seems that they're trying to address that a little bit with this nerf. We'll see if that does a lot to that kind of playstyle, but yeah, we'll have to see on that. Now let's talk about hero changes. They seemingly nerfed Abrams, so he has a little less resilience, he has more life scaling, which is really nice to see, and they fixed more cases of the charge running into things that it shouldn't have. So last patch they got rid of the whole running into stairs thing to stun people, and I don't know if I love that change because I think it removes a lot of value from a lot of Abrams slam, and so now he has to run into a wall, and so, I mean, there's a little more counterplay, but we'll have to see how this plays out. I don't really love nerfing Abrams right now because I think he's actually in a pretty solid spot for people who are just getting into the game and such. They also nerfed Bebop hook range, which is a pretty significant nerf because a lot of people are getting hit by hooks that they just felt like they shouldn't have, and so that's going to be a very big hit to his power alongside the nerf to Echo Shard, so we'll have to see how that goes. Haze across the board just got nerfed. Like they nerfed almost everything about her, which I don't feel like Haze was the worst in terms of destroying the balance of this game, but it is nice to see. I don't really find her to be a fun character to play against, and so eat shit, Haze. Now Ivy recently got a buff on her stone form, so now it could slightly hit airborne targets, which is pretty nice for her actually, because now people can't really jump out of it as easily, but it still doesn't have the craziest range when it's shooting up. It's kind of like a half circle kind of around her now instead of just being like the flat ground area that hurts people. They also got rid of a bug that I made that YouTube short on where you could stone form during the take flight animation, so you could cancel the flight animation and still get the flight off while being invincible. So it was kind of a terrible piece of tech to have in the game, and I'm happy it's gone now. They once again nerfed Kelvin's Arctic Beam, which it just feels like they don't know what to do with this ability because sometimes it'll go up in terms of how much it slows you down, sometimes it'll go down. Like they don't know how to address this move. It's kind of an unfun move for a lot of people, and I think a lot of people just don't like engaging with it. And so I think they're trying to remove a lot of the unfun aspects of it, but they just don't know how to quite nerf it and keep it still kind of strong without absolutely gutting Kelvin. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Right now, I'm going to have to see how this feels. I don't really like playing against Kelvin, and playing as Kelvin, this move just feels really cheap, so I'm happy to see they get nerfed. Big nerfs towards 7 static charge, so it isn't as big of a CC, though it probably is still a really strong CC. It's also interesting that they made it so it could be cast on yourself, so maybe you could run in and stun people. I don't know, it makes you more of a threat, especially when you have that spirit scaling and you're running super fast. It can make you super scary. Across the board, they seemingly nerfed Shiv, which, I mean, good thing. I think Shiv is just a really unbalanced character. They nerfed a bit of Viscus in terms of his cube and made it so you could react to the punch a little easier. We'll have to see how this really affects his game plan, but I don't think it's going to be that crazy of a hit on him. I think Viscus is perfectly fine how he is, so yeah, I don't think this is like the worst thing ever for him. They seemingly buffed and nerfed Binding Ward, so it's a little further now, but it also gives you slightly more time. We'll have to see how this plays out. I think it's probably fine. It doesn't feel like it's going to be that big of a change for Warden. And they seemingly buffed Warden's ult, which is kind of crazy to me because it's a really solid ult, so we'll have to see how that turns out. They've also done a little bit of map changes, so the middle of the map is a little further away from the inner lanes and such. And they also recently updated the area around the fish market, which is kind of around that area around your first Guardian. It's like right after your first Guardian, around your Walker and such. It's like right next to that veil, basically. It's an interesting change, and we'll have to see how that plays out. Here's a map for everything that really changed in terms of the map layout. It's a pretty significant change in my opinion. It makes the Walker a little easier to see when you're trying to approach it on the outer lane, so That's really nice to see. And that's about it for this patch. I find it to be very interesting, the direction they're going with the balance, and I actually really like a lot of the balance changes here. I'm actually really excited to test out the new character and give you a basic little first impressions guide video in a couple of days, so keep an eye out for that one. And yeah, this is a really interesting patch. That's at least my thoughts on a lot of the changes that were here. If you guys found this interesting, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and until next time, I hope to see you guys later. Bye-bye!